Welcome to the Performance Enhancing Podcast. It's like steroids for your brain. A podcast for people looking to live life at their peak potential. Chock full of real-world tools and knowledge that you can apply in your life today. By providing you with a lens into the lives, beliefs, practices, and actions of those who are already living extraordinary lives, the Performance Enhancing Podcast will help you shift your mindset or create that change in your daily rituals and habits so you can explode with success in the areas of life that are most important to you. So get ready for another dose of Performance Enhancing Podcast with SatoriPrime. Here's your host, Ilan Ferdman.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another installment of Pep Talk. Ilan Ferdman here, and we're about to dive into part 2 of my interview with Todd Tresidder. Todd Tresidder, if you haven't listened to part 1, is the financial mentor. He has scaling lessons called 7 Steps to 7 Figures. And in part 1, we spoke about them in a broad sense of what they actually are, started diving into a few of them. And in this part, we're going to look at some of the limiting beliefs that I have, other people have. Then we're also going to look at fundamentally what Todd actually teaches people to invest in. So even though he was in the hedge fund world, trading equities, commodities, stocks, etc., what he does today that's a little bit different. For me, something that was really interesting was getting a lesson from him about kids. What do you teach kids? Because I came from an immigrant family without any of this education. He's raising children, and I wanted to find out from him what that looks like as someone who's dedicated his life to mastering the conversations around money. And one of those conversations even took us into the value of college. So without further ado, part 2 of my interview with Todd Tresidder. Enjoy, and I hope you guys have an amazing day. Interesting. And so do people need to have a certain income level or a certain goal for this to work?
No, because it's a relationship. It's a ratio, right? It's a relationship of your passive income to your expenses. So there's some famous guys online who are financially independent and they hold blogs and stuff. So like you got Jacob Lundfisker over at Early Retirement Extreme, Early Retirement Extreme. He retired on $7,000 and was living out of a motorhome, $7,000 a year. I don't call it retirement, not my style. But Jacob did it, and more power to him. You know, he was congruent with his beliefs and how he wanted to live. I mean, he's a brilliant guy and has a really strong following. You've got Pete over at MrMoneyMustache.com, another very successful site. He's got a family of 3 that they're spending between, I think it's like $25,000 to $30,000 a year. Yeah, more power to him, right? I mean, he releases his budget and everything. I mean, I spend that much on my kids' private school.
I was going to say, wow, that'll take some work.
Yeah, so it's different values. And where I come from is there's not a right, wrong answer. Most people, when they write this stuff, they come from a right, wrong answer.
Yeah.
If you want to do it, excuse me, I'm all choked up here. if you want to do mustache. Well, no, if you want, I love Pete. Pete and Stevie are awesome people, and they're totally in integrity with their message. Definitely when it comes to learning the frugality side of the business and matching that with a stoicism message, stoicism philosophy on life, stoic philosophy on life, nobody does it with more entertainment and more lucidly than Pete does. So
brilliant. I love that.
Yeah, he's great, but it's not me.
Yeah.
Right. To me, I think a lot of people following that path, they spend just as much work and time and effort figuring out how to save money as it takes to earn it in the first place. And so for me, I think you've got to come down to what is congruent with your values. That's congruent with their values. It's not congruent with mine. I'm not a waster. I have very similar values to these other guys. I'm just not nearly the frugalist that they are because it's just too much work. I would just soon make the money and enjoy it. So again, not a right, wrong answer, but mathematically, the math is the same for all of us, which is it's the assets required to produce the cash flow is a multiple of the amount you spend. And so, there's different angles on this. You can either significantly increase your assets, your equity. Wealth builders essentially grow equity, right? So you grow your equity to increase the cash flow to support the spending, or you decrease the spending. But either way, you have to get the two to meet somehow.
So when you talk about assets, because I know you came back, you were from the hedge fund world, and you were investing in what during those hedge fund days?
Mutual funds, stocks, bonds, options, commodities.
So is that kind of the path that you train people on today?
No, not at all. No, definitely not. You know, hedge fund business, I was doing kind of the rocket science of investing, right? That's not a path that most people can follow.
Yeah.
And so there's no point in teaching that. That would be it just wouldn't have any purpose. I wouldn't be helping very many people. I teach that there's 3 asset classes you work with, which is business entrepreneurship, real estate, direct ownership of real estate, direct ownership of business, and paper assets. And all 3 are valid asset classes. They all have different principles behind them, which allows them to be used in your wealth plan in different ways. So the most scientific I go into on paper assets is in the expectancy investing course, step 5, where I teach a very straightforward, very simplified version that's kind of what I'll call the 80-20 rule.
Okay.
You can get 80% of the results for 20% of the effort. I mean, you can literally run your portfolio half hour a month and get the bulk of the results. So it's a very straightforward process.
Brilliant. I want to just switch gears here just a touch, because you just mentioned you have kids, right?
Yeah.
How old are they?
15 and 12.
Awesome. Okay, that's perfect.
As of this recording, but that's evolving rapidly.
That's true. I grew up as an immigrant. I came to this country. My parents had nothing when we came here. And I had to fight later on in life a lot of money conversations. Particularly one that comes to mind is you have to work really, really hard to earn $1, which is very immigrant mentality. And it puts you in a certain state of mind, and it also puts you in certain jobs and certain opportunities, et cetera. So I now have a 4-year-old and a 3-year-old, and they're still very, very young. But for those people that have kids out there, since I didn't grow up with any financial education, for me, it's all been learned as I go through the process. What are things that an expert like yourself teaches his kids so that they can grow up with a better money conversation and not have to kind of work with a coach like you down the road to explore these limiting beliefs around it?
Well, I'd like to believe I didn't indoctrinate my children with any limiting beliefs, but like every parent, we must burden our children with something, right?
I'm sure.
You'd have to ask my daughters this, but they learn by example. I mean, both my kids, I've watched them. They're very savvy with their spending. When they have money, they don't just blow it. They're excellent at getting good value for their purchases, something both my wife and I do. That's a hallmark of people who build wealth, is they're very value oriented in how they spend. And that's not the same thing as cheap. You can buy, sometimes a very high quality item can be the best value. So anyway, they're very good with money so far from what I've seen. I haven't seen anything that tells me otherwise. And I didn't teach them anything. They learned just by observing us as parents.
Interesting.
And how we behave. Yeah, every now and then my daughter will get little mini lectures from me if she invites it. So like the other day, the only reason this came up is like the other day we were driving and cars came up, and like I'm not a big car guy. I mean, I used to be when I was in high school. I had all the souped up performance cars and everything like a kid. And something a lot of people don't know about me is I was actually going to be a diesel mechanic for a career.
Wow.
Yeah,
what a turn of events.
Yeah, I was a total auto shop geek, and I had a '68 SS 396 El Camino that I souped up, and I built a race engine for an Italian race car. I was totally in auto mechanics. But anyway, but I'm not into cars now. I'm a family man. I built a business. I like to travel with my kids, backpack. I do different stuff now. And so to me, a car is transportation. And I forget how the conversation came up, but I explained to my daughter how you could have free cars for life if you're just willing to go through your first 3 as used cars. So like you buy a used car for your first car and get a real good value, like find one that's maybe 5 or 7 years old that only has 30 or 40,000 miles on it. They do exist, right?
Yeah.
By the time it's 5 or 7 years old, you know what the track records are for those cars, if they're reliable or not.
Yep.
So you can find these little gems if you look around, and you get them for like 20, 30 cents on the dollar because it's just the depreciation, but the car is almost new, right? So you drive the thing for like 150,000 miles, just take care of it, and take care of it. And you go through 3 cars like that, the difference in what you spend on those first 2 to 3 cars, you've got enough savings built up that those savings will pay for cars for the rest of your life.
Huh.
You'll never come out of money. You'll never come out of pocket again. So she gets little tidbits like that, right? Like I'll teach it to her, and she's looking at me like, like the confused puppy dog, right? Right. Like, what do you mean? So then I have to teach her the time value of money, and like interest rate and compound effects and stuff like that. So there's little things, but yeah, I think kids really learn by example. That was a really long answer. Sorry.
No. That's brilliant. Because look, again, even something like that, I didn't have a parent that could sit me down and say something like that. So I think kids, I guess as they get older, we realize what we were missing. But like for me, I would have loved to have had a dad who sat me down and said, hey, you're going to buy your first car. Here's how we're going to do it. Another question that I get asked a lot right now with young kids is saving for college, not saving for college, what to do. And parents, are constantly in these conversations. What's your take? Do you teach kids how to invest? Like how are you handling that whole side of it?
Well, I'm a bad example on this one. You're talking to a guy that has an extremely high value on education. Everything I'm doing today is all based on education. I'm a constant student. I'm always learning. I just consume material. The joke I throw out, I'm an infomaniac. That starts with an I, not an N.
Yeah.
Right? And so, I'm an information maniac. I consume a lot. I'm always learning. I have a high value in education. And so I've put away a lot of money for my kids' education. Their college is funded. I'm in a luxurious place where I can afford to do that. I don't consider that their responsibility. I worked my way through college and it was an extraordinary burden. I think it hurt me.
Yeah.
So, I don't feel kids should have a free ride in life. I like Warren Buffett's comment. I think that was really wise where he said, you give your children enough money that they can do anything, but you don't give them enough that they don't have to do, that they can do nothing.
Yeah.
I think I butchered that up, but you get the message.
But I get the.
Yeah, so I thought that was a lot of wisdom in that one line there. And that's where I'm coming from. I'm not going to give my kids some big inheritance, but I absolutely will gift them with as much education as they're capable of consuming.
So if you had to pass on to them some sort of mindset around money, what would you try to leave them with? If you could, say it again?
Be smart.
Yeah.
It depends on what dimension of money you're talking about. Investing is one dimension of money. Spending is another dimension. Earning is another, right? Here's how it goes. Here's how it breaks down. Everything you need to know about wealth building can be stated in one sentence, which is spend less than you make and invest the difference wisely. There. You just learned everything you have to know about wealth building. Now the devil's in the details of how the heck do you do that?
I was going to say there's a lot of nuances to that.
Well, yeah, but that is everything you need to know about money. Bam, done, right? And so now you go into the subcomponent parts, right? You say, okay, so spend less. That's a whole field of expertise. Wow. Frugality. There's tons of sites just on frugality and how you approach life from a frugal standpoint, right? And I don't even like the term frugal. I think it's value. Spending according to values. That's the way I teach it. I teach a very different approach. I'm not into frugality, although nobody would look at me and think I'm anything but frugal, right? I'm not wasteful in any way. So that's one whole side of it, right? And then you've got earn more. Okay, there's a whole field of expertise around how do you improve your earning capacity? How do you contribute to your personal capital so you can make more, right? And so there's that whole thing. Business entrepreneurship falls in that category, right? And then there's invest wisely, a whole other field of expertise.
Yeah. Right.
And so there's a lot to know to do it. And so you say, how do you get this wisdom into your kids? It's going to take a while. Hopefully they'll take my courses someday, right? Right now I'm just dad, right? So they ignore me. They can't understand why anyone would want to listen to me.
Especially in the teenage years.
Yeah. It's like, why would anybody want to listen to you or pay you $500 an hour? It's like, I won't listen to you. Right. They think it's funny.
That's excellent. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so maybe someday my kids will listen to me, but it'll probably be after I'm dead and gone and they listen to the recordings or read my books. They won't do it
now. You'd be surprised. They all come back.
Yeah.
I was actually watching something interesting yesterday about the brain and how our brain goes through different stages.
Yeah.
And they were talking about how we look down sometimes on teenagers, for example, because it looks to us like they're making irrational decisions and just doing crazy things. And the brain's job at that time, during that teenage year frame, is to question everything. Yeah. And the reason it does that is to gain its own perspective on life. So when you're a kid, and if an adult is like, don't swim with sharks, right? And it's a young kid, that's a given. That's like the fact of the world. Do not swim with sharks. Whereas a teenager, if you said, hey, would you swim in shark-infested waters? They're already in this, sharks don't necessarily attack humans. And they already go into this kind of self-discovery for themselves mode. But we just associate it as you're being a moron. Why didn't you listen to me anymore?
No. And with that said, I've got really good kids. I mean, I'm very blessed. Yeah.
I can imagine.
I mean, I'll joke about it and everything, but it's a joke that everybody understands if they've had a teenager.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. Just a complete side note, but you obviously said huge value in education. As far as college and what it is today, I don't know, from a money value, let's talk from a value perspective. Do you think it's all it's cracked up to be?
No.
No. Okay. So,
how's that for a brief?
I was not expecting it to be like that.
Can I tell you how it?
Absolutely, I would. Okay, that's what I'm curious, because you put such a huge emphasis on it. So, what would that look like now?
Well, if you look at my teachings, I teach it. Life is about experiences, not stuff. And college is a full experience. If you go there because you expect training to get a career, fine, you may get it if you're pursuing law or medicine or something where there's a direct connection between your training and your career. But for most liberal arts educations, no. Is it going to pay? Like if you blow $60,000 a year for 4 years, so $240,000, the equivalent of a house in most areas. Are you better off with the house or are you better off with the education? It's a tough thing. Eventually you're going to die. That education is going to change you permanently. The connections you made, the person you became through that process, you won't come out of college the same person. And you can never go back. If you don't go when you first come out of high school, you'll never go back. Yeah. So at least true for most people, not everybody, obviously. I can't say that universally. But sure. So for me, it's about a specific experience of maturation, coming of age. It's a great window for the education. It takes your educational level your education to another level. If you want to go deep, you now have the base to do that. It opens doors. It keeps doors from closing that otherwise, it opens doors that might otherwise be closed if you didn't have the education. And then there's a couple things that are absolute necessities in my mind. Like in today's society, with the growth of information technology and everything, you absolutely must have basic solid math skills. You must have a math mind to understand how else, because everything's governed by mathematics. Everything works by mathematics. You got to understand the principles. You don't have to be a math genius, but you got to be able to think that way. And then the other thing too is you've got to be a good writer, a persuasive writer, a strong communicator. And those are skills that it doesn't matter what field you go into, you need those.
Yeah, I've said this since my son was really, really young. Someone asked me, if you could tell him to be interested in any career, I said copywriting. I just think it's one of the most important things that anybody can learn.
So we're very close. I told both my daughters English.
Hold on 1 second. My phone. Hold on. Let me turn this off. We're ready for both. I told you. That's her. So wait, you told your daughters what? English?
Yeah. So I told both my daughters, English and math. And if you look at what I really pay attention to in their work, it's English and math and art. So anyway, that's just walking the talk. I mean, to me, it's just so critical to get those communication skills early on.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because we were talking about experiences and my whole take on it recently has become, I'm surrounded by people like yourself who are quote unquote experts in very specified fields. And for today, the equivalent of $50,000, you could pretty much hire the top person in almost any field to work one-on-one with a very young quote unquote apprentice, to train them in something that they really are passionate about, versus me saying, hey, you go do this thing because I think it's important. And I think there's something to be said about mastery in general. Just pursuing mastery in any art form gives you a certain level of understanding of what that takes, because mastery is a lifelong process. You're in the mastery of finances.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. And I also think that it's two sides of the same coin. You got to dive deep in something in order to have value to contribute.
Yes.
Right? Because you've got to be out on the leading edge. But then the flip side argument of that is you have to have reached wide in order to contribute something unique, because typically unique contributions come from unrelated fields, and then they're adapted over to the field that you're an expert in. And so you want to have a broad, deep education and be, it's as simple as just being curious. Yeah. I mean, I'm fascinated by the world. I'm fascinated by the stuff around me. I wish I had 4 lifetimes to live it all and learn it all. So it's about being curious and learning and being amazed by everything going on around you. I mean, I go to the Financial Bloggers Conference. This is a good one. I go to the Financial Bloggers Conference, right? Because that would be what I'm characterized as doing, is financial blogging. I don't consider blogging at all, but anyway, that's a whole other thing. Like financial bloggers, there's like more than 1,000 financial bloggers, and you can count the number of guys over 50 in the group with one hand. With one hand, right? So what does that say about the guys that are doing it? They're all really cool guys, right? I'm not talking about myself, right? I can't say about myself, but all the other guys that I connect with, they're really cool guys, because here's these old dudes embracing content marketing and blogging and all the new technology and living the adventure, and they're fun, interesting people. So,
and they will stay young for a long time because they keep pursuing these things versus just, here's what I know and I'm sticking to that, which is great.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, before I ask the last question, were you always curious and just about learning, or that's something that you developed later on in life?
Yeah, I was walking the other day. This will be the first forum where I've shared this personal insight, right? I was walking the dog the other day, and I was listening to a podcast, and it was with Jay Baer talking about how, he had thought he always wanted to be a professor, and now he's even better than a professor because he's teaching all these people, and he doesn't have any of the nonsense to deal with of a institution. And I'm paraphrasing. That's not exactly what Jim said, but that was part of his conversation. And I thought about it, and I went, oh my gosh, that's me. Like I thought I could have been very happy as an academic professor in a college environment. Like I really love learning that much, right? And I could have been in books and teaching and all that. And I looked, I go, oh, wait a minute. I am doing that. I'm teaching, and I'm teaching my unique message now. I actually became a professor. I never realized it, until literally a few days ago.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I'll take it a step further. You're doing it to people who are ecstatic to learn from you versus at a college where someone's going to say, oh, why I learn this, right? It's so different. It's engaging, it's fulfilling, and you see the results because people are actually putting your teachings to use in reality versus just regurgitating it to you on a test, which is very, very.
But I never connected it before. Like I've done all this stuff, done all this work. I've been writing. I published books. I mean, it sounds like a professor's life. Look at the backdrop with all the books and the shelves and everything, right? Like
with greater impact and more money.
And I'm like, I never connected it until I heard him talk, and I went, oh my gosh, that was me. Like I had always thought I was going to be a professor, live in an academic environment, and now here I am. Look what I'm doing.
Great. That's absolutely great. All right, Todd, last question. There's that cliche of, I wish I knew then what I know now. What's something, and this could be at any point in time, but what's something that you know now that you absolutely wish you would have known at an earlier part in your life?
I wish I would have this is one of the investment mistakes that I teach a lot of people. I wish I would have bought more rental real estate at a very young age. So, like rather than live in an apartment and pay rent, scrape, beg, borrow, whatever it takes, get enough for a down payment and buy a duplex or a fourplex, live in one side, rent the other, learn the ropes of being a landlord, learn the ropes of real estate, in a small way, buying it, and then go buy another one.
Wow.
As soon as you can scrape up enough, go buy another one. And the key is get it on a fully amortizing fixed rate mortgage. Those words I did not use loosely. Those are exact words. Fully amortizing fixed rate mortgage. Because if you buy these things in your 20s and 30s, then by the time you reach a ripe old age like this guy, those puppies are paid off and they are putting cash in your pocket every month, and you know them inside out. You know how to run them. You know what you're doing, and you've got a inflation adjusting cash flow stream you can never outlive. And so it's just so simple, so easy. There's no easier path to wealth. You don't have to be a financial genius. Just don't waste your money on rent. Just go buy a rental unit instead. And
brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, it's so easy, and yet I didn't get it. When I was younger, I didn't get it. I was all on the rocket science of paper assets, and I was all caught up in that, and I just missed that boat entirely.
Well, now you got kids to teach that to. All right. Where can people find you? Where can they connect with you? Where can they find out more about these courses?
Yeah. So everything's at financialmentor.com. That's financialmentor.com, just like it sounds. That's my hub. If you look on the main menu, you'll see products, which is where you'll see the courses. The only one that's available for purchase now is the step 3, which is how to design your wealth plan. That's part of what we talked about here. I've got books that you can get at Amazon if you just want to see if I can teach or not. And then if you subscribe to the newsletter, I have 2 free giveaways. I give away a book called 18 Essential Lessons of a Self-Made Millionaire, and it goes through some of the stuff we talked about here, but there's a lot of other stuff in there as well. And then I also give away a free course called 52 Weeks to Financial Freedom. And in that course, I go through the whole framework in a lot more detail than what we covered here about how you actually go through the financial freedom process. And that's, again, a freebie.
Amazing. I will be checking out all of them. Todd, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you so much for sharing your honest wealth of information. And you just speak from a place. I've spoken to people about money before. There's a difference in the way that you communicate it because you live it. It's like your experiential teaching versus I've heard this sounds good, or I've read a whole bunch of books, and it's very refreshing. I really enjoy speaking to people that are masters from their own experience and not just, I'm sure you read a ton, but like you've put it into your life and then you share from there. It's really refreshing and brilliant.
Thanks a lot, Elon. I really appreciate that. That meant a lot to me. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Did you run through doors till you hit the floor? Did you